I would like to thank God for this beautiful opportunity to be able to share the word of the Lord once again with the SV community. The other day when I was going through the story of Cornelius, and we all know the story, how he was praying and the angel of the Lord appeared to him and gave him instructions on what he had to do. I began thinking, why did the angel had to appear to a Gentile, like there were so many people in Israel at that same point of time. But then when I began reading about Cornelius, it says, at Caesarea there was a man named Cornelius, a centurion in what was known as the Italian regiment. He and all his family were devout and God-fearing. He gave generously to those in need and prayed to God regularly. So we see there were four characteristics. He and his family were first devout, second God-fearing, third he gave generously to those in need, and fourth he prayed to God regularly. Now I just want to focus on this one thing called God-fearing. He and his family feared the God of Israel. Whereas when we look at it from a general point of view, a Gentile actually had nothing to do with the God of Israel. But still, he feared the God of Israel. Now, many a times what happens is, since we have been introduced to God from a very young age, it's very easy for us to take God for granted, or to take his teachings for granted, or to not take the Lord seriously. But this is one of the most important characteristics of Cornelius that I see, that he was God-fearing with his family. He feared God. Now, what does it mean to fear God? Like when we know that God is our friend, we know that he loves us, but he is still the king, he's still the creator of the whole universe, and we ought to give him the respect that he deserves. Many a times, just because we have been introduced to him at a very young age, we easily take him very lightly. We take him for granted. Now when we read in Luke chapter 4 verses 24 to 27, that was the time when Jesus goes to his own hometown, and Jesus says, I tell you the truth, he continued, no prophet is accepted in his hometown. I assure you that there were many widows in Israel in Elijah's time, but when the sky was shut for 3.5 years, there was a severe famine throughout the land, yet Elijah was not sent to any of them, but to a widow in Zarephath in the region of Sidon. And there were many in Israel with leprosy in the time of Elisha the prophet, yet not one of them was cleansed, only Naaman the Syrian. All the people in the synagogue were furious when they heard this, but it was the truth. And it's easy for us missionary kids to also fall into the same trap, because just because we have been listening to him, listening about Jesus from our birth or since we were very small, it's easy for us to not give the respect which God ought to receive, or to not take God seriously. And that's the reason what I find is many people who are latecomers to Christ, or to say who accepted Christ later on in their lives, like they are more active and more zealous for the Lord than the people who got to know Christ like very early, because many a times we fall into this trap of taking God very lightly. So the whole point of today's devotion is that let's once again examine our hearts and see, like, do we really take God seriously? Do we really take Jesus seriously? Because if we do not take Jesus seriously at what he says, then we are not going to be changing our lives or living our lives according to what he tells us, and our advantage will turn to be our disadvantage. The advantage of knowing God at an early age can become a disaster if we do not take God seriously. So that's the reason today I would like to request you that please examine your lives. Let us all examine our lives and see how seriously we take the Lord, and what does it mean to take the Lord seriously. It means to take every word of His and obey it in a serious manner, not thinking about what the world would say, not thinking about what our friends would say, not thinking about what our other SV alumni community would say, but taking Jesus at His word. Like if He says there is hell, which means there is hell. If He says about salvation, about the about being born again, like whatever He teaches, we ought to take it like 100% true. Thank you. God bless you.